This time on Home Built Workshop, I want to share a list of 6 tips and suggestions for working in a super tiny workshop. So if you have a small shop, stick around. Welcome to Home Built Workshop. My name is Jeff, and welcome to my very tiny workshop. We're going to talk about some tips and tricks, some suggestions, things that I have learned throughout the years of working in a very tiny space. To give you guys a frame of reference for my shop size, the space that I am currently working in is somewhere around 110 to 120 square feet. The actual shed really that I'm in is a little bit larger than that, but I also have to share some of this space with storage items for the house, so that's taking up some of the room. So by best estimation and doing some measurements, it's about 110 to 120 square feet. Now, I don't really know what a typical single car garage size is, but this thing is pretty narrow. I can't quite reach both walls, but I'm not far off from it. So I've been working in a very small space for quite a while, and I think I've got some suggestions or things that you might consider if you're trying to set up in your own small shop, or if you're looking for ways to improve your existing small space. To kick this right off, I'm going to say tip number 1 we have to consider is safety. And I don't say that because of the power tools and things that you're using, because those have their own set of safety rules and ways to operate them to not hurt yourself. The reason that I am saying safety is because of the limited space. I like to be 100%, get it done, really rush in and try to just work as fast as I can to get a project done. And in this space, I have found I just can't do that, because if I'm going 100 miles an hour, I'm gonna smash in to this corner. I'm gonna smash in to my drill press that's right there. There's just not enough room to be going super fast through here. Anytime somebody is in here, I always say, go slow, be careful, don't smash into stuff, because what I've found is really that's the biggest thing. I'm in a hurry, I crash into things, I hit my head, I just bump into stuff a lot, knock things over, trip over stuff because I'm trying to hurry, and I found that I just need to slow down. And for part of me, that goes against kind of the way I want to operate. I always want to be as efficient as I can. I want to work quickly, not waste a lot of time. But in a small space like this, that's the biggest thing that I've found, is just to slow down, be safe, don't trip over stuff, smash into things, and hopefully you don't hurt yourself. Of course, when you're operating your machinery, that's a whole other safety thing, and that's not what I'm talking about. Please always work safe when you're using your equipment, but I'm talking about just in general, slow down, don't crash into stuff. It doesn't hurt as much. Number 2 is to keep things clean and do it often. Now, you guys already know that when you're in the middle of a project, stuff gets everywhere. You've got sawdust all over everything, offcuts of wood end up on the floor, on the bench, tools and equipment get placed all over the place, and all of this stuff all over the place really makes your limited space a lot more limited. If I fill up this bench with tools and parts and pieces, now I have nowhere to put things for the next step of my process. So a lot of times what I will do when I'm done cutting everything, I will organize all my pieces, I'll try to clean up what I can and put things away that I'm already done with, instead of just setting it aside and taking up what little valuable flat spaces we have. Clean up and put things away as you go, because we don't have space to just leave it aside until the project is done. So clean up and do it often. Try to do it in between as many steps as you can. Now, yes, this does take away from some of the time that you could be spending doing the project, but trust me, in the long run, it's going to make it a lot easier and hopefully a little bit less stressful, because you're not worrying about all of this mess, trying to just shove things aside so you have somewhere to work for the next step. You've already cleaned up and you're ready. You've got your spaces cleared and you're ready to move on to your next step. For tip number 3, I'm going to go with storage. Now, all of us, no matter the size of your workspace, we need storage for tools, we need storage for hardware, parts, accessories, that sort of thing. And having a tiny shop is no different. We still need storage for all of those items, but we have a lot less room to utilize for storage. So we need to get creative with the space that we have in order to utilize it the best way we can to store whatever it is you need to store. Some of the ways that I use to store some of my things, well, the first and most obvious one is this toolbox over here. This has mostly hand tools of all sorts, mechanics tools, wrenches, sockets, as well as guitar tools, all kinds of different tools I store in the different drawers. But you also have things like power tools. I have this small organizer here which holds some of my power tools. I also have a small cabinet that has power tools all jammed into it, but really that's not completely ideal either because they're just kind of heaped in there. But it's all I can do at the moment with the space that I have. I have a lot of stuff like router bits and drill bits in holders that are mounted to the walls. There's some links in the descriptions to some of the different videos that I've done for some of those storage solutions. I also try to utilize space that most of us don't typically think about as a storage space. Get creative, look around your shop. Where could you build a little drawer, a little compartment? Where could you tuck away a little tub of something? There's space underneath our toolboxes. I have a little drawer that rolls underneath mine that stores things that I hardly ever need to get to, but it's always there and it's a dedicated spot that really most people probably don't think about. Wall space is another great option. Now I know wall space is at a premium in a super tiny shop, but try to utilize the space that you can for hanging jigs and fixtures or maybe some storage bins or whatever it is. Don't be afraid to just hang stuff on your walls and utilize what little wall space you can. Something that I would like to be able to take advantage more of are shelving units, but I just don't really have any space to build some big shelving units because there's just no room to put them. And that brings me to tip number 4. Let's talk about tools. Even if you're strictly a hand tool woodworker, you still need to have some tools. So I think we could probably all agree that tools in some form are pretty important in a workshop. If you guys are like me and you like to do a wide variety of projects from metalworking to woodworking to electronics, whatever it is that you want to do, there's a lot of different tools that you need to consider to be able to do with the projects that you want to do. And we can't just go out and buy the latest and greatest giant cabinet table saw or floor standing bandsaw or the giant drill press, whatever that tool is that you really would like to have. One tool that I personally would love to have is a CNC machine. I think it would be awesome for building guitars and a lot of other projects, but even if I could write the check right now and buy one, I don't have anywhere to put it. I just don't have the physical space to put it in here. Even if somebody gave me one right now, I have nowhere to put it. And that's a big problem. So you have to choose your tools wisely. If you mainly do woodworking, maybe you don't need a belt grinder, maybe you don't need a welder, or who knows what other tool. And you can kind of make your choices based around the type of projects that you do. When I'm looking for a new tool, let's say a bandsaw, if I was going to go buy a brand new bandsaw right now, I unfortunately could not look at the 14-inch or larger floor standing models because I just don't have the floor space to sit one of these things. I'd love to have one, but I'm going to start looking at what benchtop versions seem like they fit the bill for me. Now, sometimes though with the smaller tools, unfortunately, you do give up some features based on the size, but it's a give and take. If you want the small footprint, you've got to go with the smaller tool, and sometimes we just can't control what features they put on those smaller tools. I think just about every single tool that I have is small enough that I can pick it up and move it around. I don't have any of mine mounted on casters. I definitely see the advantage of being able to wheel around your tools if you have somewhere to wheel them to. In here, I don't have anywhere I could wheel them even if they were on casters, so it doesn't do me a lot of good to be able to move them around. Now, I'm not saying that casters are a bad idea. I totally get it if you have some space to move. Now, maybe if you're working in maybe a two-car garage and you have to park your vehicles in there so you have them on wheels to roll them up against the wall, then you can pull your cars out, wheel the tools out, do your work, wheel everything back. In that type of situation, I totally get that the casters are an advantage, but in here, I don't see where it's necessary because I don't have anywhere I can wheel stuff to. So depending on your layout, it may or may not be a good idea to have them on casters, but for me in here, in this tiny space, it just doesn't make sense. If I really need to move something because of a longer cut or whatever, I'll pick it up and I can set it over here on this work surface, or really I can pick up my whole table saw, or slightly pick it up anyway, scoot it out the door and do all of my work outside, which takes me into our next tip. And tip number 5 is to utilize the great outdoors. There's been many occasions where I will drag my table saw outside to make cuts on some long stock because I don't have the depth to do it in here. Outside is perfect. It doesn't really matter the length of your material. I'll do cutting, grinding, welding, that sort of thing outside. One other advantage, you don't have to clean up the sawdust. You can just leave it out there on the ground. At least I can here, and it just kind of grinds in with the dirt, and it's not really a big deal. But work outside whenever you can. The light is awesome because, well, working in natural sunlight, you just can't beat that, really, in my opinion. Working outside, get some fresh air. It's just nice. I think it's overall good for you. Anyway, something about that. But consider moving your tools outside when you can. That is an advantage of having them on casters because you could just roll one right out. If you have, concrete or some sort of hard surface you can roll them on. Mine's dirt, so casters wouldn't work so great. But try to utilize the outdoors. If it's too hot, you can get a lot of those pop-up canopies, keep you in the shade, and really it's a great option to work outside. Gain some extra space. Actually, your shop's kind of unlimited if you do it that way. And the last tip, what is this, number 6? Number 6, choose your projects wisely. There are tons of projects that I would love to build, larger projects, maybe long-term projects. Unfortunately, even if I have all the tools or knowledge to build whatever the large project is that I want to build, I don't physically have room to build it. I might be able to start cutting some of the pieces, but if I was going to build some sort of a kitchen cabinet set, I don't have anywhere to assemble this. I have one work table back here, and I have this work surface that sits on top of my table saw. Other than that, I don't have much space. My floor space is mainly devoted for a walking path between the different tools. So unfortunately, I really can't take on larger projects, and there's been several times where I've had to turn down commissions or different projects, even though they sounded really cool, because I just can't build that large cabinet or that large table that I want to build or that someone's asking me if I can build. For those of you that have been following my channel for a while, you guys have seen me do all kinds of different projects, but overall, none of them are giant. And that's exactly why. Even that saddle stand that I made for my daughter, that wasn't even a huge project, but it took up all of this space here, and it was really kind of tricky to work on safely and film for a video to share with you guys. So I always have to consider the size of a project, not necessarily how hard it is, but overall, if the project is too big, unfortunately, I just can't do it. So there's my 6 tips for working in a tiny shop. Hashtag tiny shop. What I want to know from you guys is what tips, tricks, suggestions do you guys have for working in a tiny space? Hopefully, maybe some of these are helpful, at least help get the gears turning for maybe some ways that you can utilize your tiny shop. If you guys enjoy this type of video and you'd like to see some other videos where we take a deep dive into certain topics, leave me your suggestions down below in the comments and we'll try to work those in. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.